News Talk time, currently 10:06, and with that, we would begin hour number one of the Saturday special with MZ.
Josh Stevens.
Michael
Hi, Josh
Zwerling.
Stevens.
Hello, Michael Zwerling.
Hey, we have the chief. We have the chief here. Here come the chief.
The chief.
He's not here.
What
he's
chief?
Actually farther away, but
The Indian chief?
No. The chief of police of the city of Santa Cruz, and we also have Dave Michaels.
Good morning, MZ.
And you do Flight 1080.
I do Flight 1080.
5 days a week, our afternoon drive from 4 to 7 p.m. And what were you telling me?
I was telling you that Chief Andy Mills, I would love to have him on the show. Man, he gets hammered by our callers. They hammer on this guy all the time. They blame him for everything, and they especially come down on him for the homeless situation, right? It's out of control. What's Chief Andy Mills doing? He's sitting at home doing this and that, and I can't believe it. I cannot believe just the lack of willingness to understand that he's power. He can't do anything. He cannot do anything about the homeless. He can't.
And he'll be here. He's
going to be here, and I feel bad because they just hammer on him, and I keep telling them, you don't understand. There is nothing he can do. If it was up to me, if I was a sheriff, MZ, I would. If I caught some homeless guy looking at me, Chief of Police, I would lock him up for any little thing, lock him up and keep them locked up so they could sober up, get some help. That's where they need to be. They need to be locked up. He can't do that. He can't even kick them out of camping in public places. There's not much that he can do. He's in a really tough spot, and I think a little more understanding on behalf of the people who unfairly criticize him would be more productive than just sitting on there and just dumping on him all day.
I wasn't aware of what you were telling me. That's why I wanted you to bring it up, because you mentioned it to me.
Yeah.
And you said, where's Chief Mills?
I mean, maybe he can do something about it, and he's not. And if that is true, then he deserves it.
No, I think he's under the.
There's nothing he can do according to the Supreme Court rulings. You can't kick these people out unless there's a place to provide them, adequate shelter, and apparently that's not happening. I don't know. You can ask him about that, MZ. Right. I'm going to be out at the Dave Cave. I've been recording a fantastic CD with Dr. Wallach. I need people's help. I need them to send me questions that you would like to have Dr. Wallach answer. DM at KSCO.com, or you can call 218-5726. Leave your question there. We'll get them addressed, because I have a good connection with Dr. Wallach now, and I would really love to get more help for people. Something he told me, MZ, and I'm going to get out of here, is when you buy the Arthrodex, which is fantastic for your four-legged friends.
For your aminals.
For your aminals, for your pets, Arthrodex is fantastic. But it doesn't have all the essential nutrients. What you also need to add is the little EFAs, omega-3, 6, and 9. That's your fish oils or the plant-derived oils, whatever it is. But you also have to add that to your pet's diet as well as the Arthrodex. I'm telling you, though, the Arthrodex is fantastic.
Yeah. I would see people all around with obviously arthritic dogs and pussycats, and I would tell them, if you promise me that you will use this, I'll give you a sample. And they promise, and said you have to it's a food additive, and see what happens in a week or two. And always the aminal decided to act like a younger aminal.
Something else I want to do, MC, is to set up a date. Like this Friday, I'll be out at such and such dog park and go out there and hang out, and I'll go for a walk and then stop by my car, and hand out some samples. I would love to do that.
Wow.
Just as long as I have a place to go get my exercise, I can meet them there, and we can all have fun. They can try out the Arthrodex. I'm telling you, if you've never tried it for your pet.
It's not illegal for you to get exercise at a dog park, even though you're not a dog, right? We can confirm
we'll
that.
Sniff each other out. We can just have some fun. Right. Chase some cats, dig some gophers out. We'll have fun. All right, MZ, I'm going to be out in the Dave Cave until 2.
Fantastic.
I got Flight 1080 and KSCO gear. Support your favorite radio station, your favorite show. I'm out there.
Thank you so much, Dave Michaels. Okay, so let's start the show officially.
Good morning. A brighter day is here. Good morning. May we bring you cheer.
We've got time, we've got tunes, we've got time, tunes, and temperature.
Get up and go, it's today, on KSCO Radio.
Good morning and welcome to hour number 1 of your KSCO Saturday special. It's MZ here Josh is at the controls. Josh Stevens.
Howdy, MZ.
How you doing? And
Beautiful.
And
How about you?
I've never had the chief of police on the radio here to interact with the listeners, but we're going to do that today. So stay with us. I'm sure you will be happy you did.
Good morning. Now stay right here on KSCO Radio.
Have you ever wanted to talk to the police chief of Santa Cruz about something, anything? Well, you'll get your chance on the next KSCO special when Chief Andy Mills will be with us for the entire program. Homelessness, drugs, needles, traffic, arrests, deportation, heck, maybe even something nice. If anyone can think of something, please let's try this Saturday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon, right here on Get It Straight from the Horse's Mouth Radio, FM 104.1 and AM 1080 KSCO. Chief Andy Mills. How are you, Chief Andy Mills?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Good. Now you're in the state of California, but you're not right here. Otherwise, you would be here. So,
right.
Yeah. So let's see. I'm looking forward to this couple hours here because it's not every day that we get to talk to the chief, and I think you've been covered a lot on the radio station, and you've been in the news, and I think you've been on a show or two, yeah.
Yeah, I've been on Rosie's a couple of times, and then Off the Lip a couple of times.
Oh, okay, great. So, what do you think? What are the biggest challenges of being the chief of police in Santa Cruz, California?
Another friend chief just sent me a JPEG of a picture of a guy riding a bike, and it said, "Being a chief is like riding through a fire, being on fire with your bike on fire, and then somebody's yelling, you're on fire." It's busy, and you get a lot of input from various sources, and you try to sort out what's the best path forward for your city and for your department, and then you try to make the best decisions possible.
And you have been chief at other communities as well, yes?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I was chief in Eureka for almost 4 years, and then was as many people know, a captain in San Diego for numerous years.
Do they still have the Samoan cookhouse up there in Eureka?
They do. And if you want a good down-home, meal, that's a good place to go. Get some fried chicken and some green beans and some ham.
Right. Yeah, cool. So homelessness is the big issue along the coast in temperate places, right? I had a discussion with our engineer, Bill Graff, here a while back, and he said that homelessness will never be solved for one reason. And I said, what's that? He said, in Santa Cruz. He says, because it doesn't snow in Santa Cruz. What do you think of that? I mean...
Well, I think he's partly true. We do attract people because of our fantastic climate. But so does San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, even Eureka and Crescent City. Every coastal hub from Northern California to Southern California has an immense homeless population and a problem. Now, when we look at the data that we can pull, and both from the point-in-time count as well as sending our own officers out into the field to talk with people, about 70% of the homeless are from our region. Read that as Santa Cruz County, maybe southern Santa Clara County, in northern Monterey County. That area, 70%. And
people who grew up here and presumably were not homeless when they were growing up.
Right. And we tried to drill down, because a lot of people will come here and say things like, where are you from? Well, I'm from Santa Cruz. Well, then we follow up with questions. Well, how long have you been here in Santa Cruz? And then we also follow up with, well, where did you go to high school at? And where is your family primarily located? So we drilled down, I felt, pretty good distance to find out, where are people from? Now, that still leaves about a third of the people who are here come from all over the country, and we certainly see it. You get in a couple different ways. You get travelers that come through and spend a week or two here, and then you also get people who come here and relocate, and for whatever reason, and and that's and part of this country is you have the right to do that. The question is, do we make it an appetizing place for people to come through other means as well as the weather? And can we reverse that to at least, to help people understand that we don't have the resources for them? And that's what, I talked to a drug addict who came and said, I came to Santa Cruz because I came to get rehab. And, I explained to her, we don't have spots for you. We don't have spots for the people who are from here. And if we did, we would certainly want people to get help. But there's not adequate space available.
Wow. And what do you think the reason for that is? Because of the anti-growth and building sentiment of the last 50 years?
Well, no, I think in my opinion, there are three things that drive homelessness. One is lack of affordable housing. And certainly Santa Cruz is in a situation like that. I talked to a motorhome that, I went out with patrol earlier this month. Yeah, about 1 o'clock in the morning, we talked to a motorhome parked out on highway on Mission out by the far west end, and talked to the people in the motorhome. There was a mother and two children and a man. He said, where are you from? The license plate, we were in, the license plate came back, Santa Cruz. I said, where are you guys from? They said, we grew up here in Santa Cruz. Both of us went to elementary school here. Our families have been here for 2 or 3 generations. We just lost our housing. We can't afford it. And so now we're living in this motorhome with our children. So lack of affordable housing is a problem. And, there are other people, more experts, talk about why that is than me. The planning, economic development, all those folks, they're the experts in that field. But obviously the price of housing is enormous in our region. Second thing that we lack is mental health facilities. This is a mental health crisis. And whether it's fueled by methamphetamine or the mental health fuels the methamphetamine, I'm not 100% sure, but I do know this. It's an enormous problem. Most of the people that we talk to who are the ones that the average citizen complains about have a mental health crisis. You see, yesterday I got my morning briefing today, and last night a man was walking down the street holding a gun to his head and threatening to kill himself. And our officers immediately located the guy, de-escalated it, took him into custody, took the gun from him. It was a pellet gun. Mm-hmm. But this is just a symptom of the greater problem. People don't know it, but there are only 16 mental health crisis beds in the county of Santa Cruz. If you go to 17, the federal government strips your funding.
What?
Yes, and so it's a difficult process, and I have great compassion for the folks over at the county who have to look at these beds and say, okay, which person do I kick out of here to put this person in right now? So we get a dope and release policy, by default. And so these are the things that we have to figure out as a community. How do you fix those things? And then the third piece of the crisis is clearly drug addiction. This has been a very permissible region for the use of drugs and the promulgation of drug policy that is permissive. And I think that the chickens have come home to roost. And now we have a lot of people who are mentally ill or addicted to methamphetamine and opioids. and this is a enormous, public health crisis as well as a criminal crisis from the standpoint of you've got people dealing methamphetamine and heroin all over the place, and then we as a society have selectively chosen to approve bills and propositions to reduce the impact and to limit what the police can do in terms of simple possession of narcotics. If somebody's dealing, we can certainly still deal with that. But if you get caught with dope, you're not going to go to jail. You're going to get a ticket, and that has, I think, had a profound effect on the drug addiction, the level of drug addiction.
So you would be in favor of being more harsh than, a citation, right? For
well,
that.
Yeah.
That would have a chilling effect. It makes sense. Actually does, for sure.
Excuse me?
It makes sense. It would make sense that fear of going to jail rather than getting a citation would have a chilling effect on the ease with which to get drugs, right?
It may, but we think back to the early '90s when we had the crack cocaine epidemic. I mean, that's what drove and fueled the crime in California, if you remember back that far. And what caused that to abate? We're not 100% sure, but for whatever reason, crack cocaine was significantly reduced. We do see it occasionally, but not nearly as much as it was. Could it have been the 3 strikes law where people went to prison? But now we've specifically chosen as a state to walk that back the other direction, where we're trying very hard not to mass incarcerate people. Now, I do believe that in order for us to actually solve this problem, we absolutely have to reduce the demand. And we are not going to reduce the demand by incarcerating everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's a difficult policy, balance. But there needs to be drug rehabilitation, and people have to be willing to participate in that. But I think that kind of gets back to your earlier comment. At what point do we say, okay, we are offering you this help, and if you don't want that help, the alternative is we are going to compel you to get help. And that's where we're at with not only drug addiction, but I think people who are choosing not to accept help in terms of homelessness.
Wow. We're talking with Santa Cruz City Chief of Police Andy Mills, and the main topic is the topic that's on everybody's mind, but there are other topics too that we can certainly discuss other than homelessness. I got to tell you, they're making such a big deal out of homelessness, not so much in Santa Cruz, but in San Francisco.
Right.
On Fox News Channel. I watch that, and I watch the others as well, but I would say I watch Fox more than the others. And I spend, probably 50% of the time in San Francisco. And from the way Fox talks about San Francisco, I think they overdo it. I really do. I think they make it seem a lot worse than it really is. Not that it's not bad, because I do quite a bit of walking. I do 5 to 7 miles of walking every day, wherever I am, rain or shine. And I've never had to dodge human feces in San Francisco, as Fox News would have you believe, that you have to do hopscotching to avoid it. That's never happened to me, at least. Now, maybe I don't go, maybe I don't frequent those parts of the city where it might be that bad. But to me, it's just the solution. How do you get behind the drug thing? I mean, how do you solve that? God, I don't know. I mean, just what you're talking about.
Well, it's obviously a multifaceted. You need a multifaceted approach, and people who are just singularly focused are really missing the importance of sound policy. So,
but the affordability factor affects everybody, not just the drug addicts who don't have any money because they piss it all away on drugs. You know, what about the other people? The other people, like the people you described, the people who were living in their vehicle, who had a home that they no longer could afford, right?
Right.
And there's a lot of people like that who have nothing to do with drugs. I don't. Is there any data available about what percentage of the homelessness are wonked out on drugs, and how much aren't? I mean, that'd be real interesting to know.
Yeah, that is in the point in time count data. However, I don't find that overly reliable, because when this is self-reporting, and if you're asking a person to use drugs, they may or may not tell you the truth. Again, and the homeless population isn't just one population. There's a lot of different stratifications of that population. There are people who are very intelligent, educated, good people who have really fallen hard times. Not very many, but there are some. There are some who are just mentally ill and just truly incapable of caring for themselves, but they don't meet the standard that the state would have set up for being at a point where we can take them into custody. And then there are also some who just truly want to live this lifestyle. And those are the folks that we encounter most often. Most often are mentally ill, and most often are also co-occurring disorder, which is drugs. And we find that population has a much higher percentage. That's the folks you see on the street over by on Coral Street.
Yeah.
The folks that many of which were in Ross Camp. And this is the tough population that's difficult to deal with.
I see. Yeah, I've read that you and your wife choose to live in downtown Santa Cruz, which, I haven't gone to too much in recent years, but in my walks recently I have. And it's pretty impressive down there, It's pretty cool. And so I was going to ask you why, but I don't need to, because it's a cool place. I know the answer already.
Yeah, we adore it, and yes, there are some problems occasionally downtown, but there are people that you would, that have the Chicken Little syndrome. I mean, the sky is falling on literally everything. And I think that there's a disingenuous motive behind their thought process. And, Kathy, my wife, walks, 6 to 10 miles a day all over our city. That's how she gets her exercise. And, you have to be aware, and, if there's a bunch of people under an overpass, you go around the overpass. But, and you shouldn't have to do that. I understand that. But at the same time, this is reality. We live in an urban environment. And, we love the downtown. We're comfortable down there. All the places to go and eat. We go to Palomar once a week, as well as many of the other restaurants. And truly enjoy that living experience.
Does Palomar still have the softest chips that I remember eating in their salsa? Years ago, I remember that nobody had chips and salsa like Palomar. Is that still the case?
I think it's closest to what I know as Mexican food in our area. And then I love their pozole.
Oh, wow. I love pozole, too.
Every once in a while, we'll have a bondegas, which is also...
Oh, meatballs. Very, very delicious. Wow, that's great. So Chief Andy is a foodie also, it sounds like. That's pretty good.
Obviously, it shows.
All right, there are a number of callers who've called 831-479-1080 who want to talk. So let's open the phones now. Why wait? Before, I want to ask you one question that I might forget. What is the status of the law regarding living in a vehicle in the city of Santa Cruz? Are you allowed to, or are you not allowed to?
Well, we don't currently have an ordinance prohibiting camping in our city. That was suspended by City Council because of the Martin versus Boise decision. Now the Supreme Court refused to hear it, so that is the law of the land. which we saw that coming about 2 years ago, and so that's why we created the policies we have.
And that basically requires that you can't stop people from camping in a place. You can't sweep them away unless you have enough alternative housing that you provide or that the city provides. Yes? Did I say it right, or is that not quite right?
It's a little bit more complex than that, but essentially, we need to provide them with a location that they can lawfully camp.
Okay. So most recently, the Ross camp was dismantled a second time, or maybe it was a third time. I think it was the second time, right?
Right.
So where did those people, where were they directed to go?
We didn't direct them to go anywhere.
Oh.
We just told them that they can't be at that location.
Okay.
And that is the essence of the problem that my officers face literally every day. We have somebody camping at such and such a location. We go get a call from a citizen saying, hey, there's a person camping there. So we have to be very careful how we do this because there's not a law that allows us, if they're in public place anyway, that so we can say, okay, you can't be here, but you can be somewhere else. And because that becomes very difficult. And so when you go and talk to the people who are camping or sitting or lying, first thing they look at you and say, okay, Chief, and I've done this 100 times. Where would you like me to go? I don't have an answer. We do.
But isn't that what this Boise decision is all about?
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm totally confused now. Because we don't have a place, so does that mean our city is not in compliance with the Boise law that has been upheld basically by the Supreme Court?
No, because we're not writing them tickets for camping, nor are we prosecuting them for camping. What we do is we ask them kindly to move on, unless there's some other type of enforcement that can take place as a result of their behaviors other than camping.
And suppose they refuse. Suppose they say, "I know about the Boise, decision," and
which they do.
Yeah, and then can you arrest them, or do you arrest them? And
no,
if they refuse to go.
Nope.
Well, so what happens? Do you think the Ross camp is going to be repopulated for a third or fourth time?
No, I do not, because the difference there was that. The legal reason we were able to push them out of that location was because, that part of that is state property, and that state property is you can't trespass on that state property, and then the other part was city property, which had been ordered closed by the city council. So we were able to go in there and to tell them under state statute, and because the city council had closed our portion and the CHP was there with us to close their portion, we said you cannot be here, and almost everybody complied. One person did not; they were cited and released.
Okay, so, well, one would think that if publicly owned property is not going to be a suitable use for housing homeless people, what would? Because certainly no private is. Well, I guess there is a private property that's the homeless shelter that's the Rebele family funded many years ago on the corner of Coral and River, right?
Yeah. So we have several locations that we send people to, but they're mostly full. One is the River Street camp that the city is running with some funding from the county.
The River Street camp.
That's at 1220 River Street.
So that's an encampment as well as a building that houses people that I've known people. We might even get a caller, one or more caller to this radio program from someone who lives there or has lived there.
Yeah, there's not a building there. It's all tents.
Oh.
It's behind a fence.
I see.
It's right across from the metro, right adjacent to the metro center.
I see. Okay.
And then we also have the Salvation Army is housing about 50 to 60 people. And then
it's on Laurel Street.
That's on Laurel Street, and now I think that the county has reopened the VFW out on 7th.
Okay. All righty. Let's go to the phone lines here. I'll take the next, which will be the first. That would be Lucas and Soledad. Hey, Lucas, you're on with Chief Mills and MZ.
Oh, thanks. Hey, yeah, I'm just a little confused why we have a lot of Democrat senators that are here in California and people who push for the homelessness, and they're worth a lot of money. Why don't they help? Okay? Because they're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And
well, that's your rhetorical question. You don't expect the chief to answer that question, do you, Lucas?
No, I don't expect him to answer it, but I just throwing that out there for people who want to vote for, certain people in this California. But my thing is even with, like the homelessness. I mean, I know that when I had to commute from Modesto up to, the Bay Area right here, and I could pull over to the side and try to just sleep for the night, and I'd be asked to move. And because, and all I was doing was trying to sleep for the night and, be in one area. So I don't understand how the homelessness can get away with just sleeping every night at the same place over and over again. Is there some reason for that? Instead of just trying to figure out how, with the state legislation, there has to be a better way to fix all this. I mean, I feel sorry for the homelessness, no doubt. Believe me on that part. But yet, there's a better way to fix this.
Andy, do you have a response for Lucas?
Well, Lucas makes some points. First of all, I'm glad that he pulled off the side road to catch some sleep, or if he was driving, because that's important. To not drive while you're tired. That's worse than drunk driving almost. I think that, one of the things that we're trying to do with the city attorney is define the difference between sleeping and camping. One of the things we're going to be bringing forward to city council is an ordinance that defines the difference. So if a person has the right and the need, it's a human function to sleep. We certainly want to support that. But camping becomes a completely different issue. When you set up a tent and you have garbage all over the place, and, bikes here and parts there and so forth, that is what I don't think we as a community can tolerate, because that becomes a public health hazard. It becomes a visual blight. And I think those are the things that we can abate to make sure that we as a community have set a standard of what the norm is, and then that fixes some of the issues I think that Luis was asking about.
Great. Hey, Lucas, thanks for calling 479-1080. We move on to Steve in Santa Cruz now about street camping. Go ahead, Steve, you're on.
All right, thanks, you guys. I just got a couple quick anecdotes you might find amusing. 2 times I've been, I've needed to sleep in my car. Once was in San Juan Capistrano, once in Carmel. Visiting friends, went out to eat, exhausted, slept in my back seat or whatever. And when the sheriff came by, he said, "It's time to move on." I said, "Can I just finish sleeping and leave in the morning?" And he said, "It's time to move on." So there's other places where, they let you know right where they're at. And the other thing I wanted to say was, quickly, was when I got here in the very early 80s, I came down from Northern California in a van, and it was considered unacceptable to sleep in your vehicle in Santa Cruz when I moved here in '83. I rented a driveway from a friend, and paid him $30 a week to park my camper in his driveway, because the consensus was back then that street camping was unacceptable, and the homeless population was a completely different animal back then too. And as far as a solution, I think it's a phenomenal social complex formula that's got to be solved. The one suggestion I had would be to have, let's say, like you mentioned off 3 or 4 different shelters. So I would say, if I was Andy Mills, I'd say, okay, we've got 4 shelters that hold 70 people each. And once those are filled, the people have to maybe move to either Watsonville or the fairgrounds out of Watsonville, maybe some sort of a secondary overflow. But just you'd have to tell people, you know what, we've used up all our resources here. You just have to move on.
What do you think, Andy?
Well, that's exactly the opposite of what the Boise decision was. And I do understand Steve's thought process on that. And I think that what I do agree with Steve is that this should be a county-wide solution, not a city of Santa Cruz solution. Because you have people camping all over the county, including Watsonville, which is struggling with some other issues. They have a little bit different homeless population. And I've talked with their chief and many of the people who work down there. But with the Boise decision is if there are not beds available, then you cannot do enforcement. And what I would, when there are beds available, that's when we can do enforcement. And that's when we are doing enforcement, as long as there's an ordinance to do that, which we don't have right now.
But Mr. Mills, I'm just wondering, do they expect you to absorb an infinite amount of travelers and people and drifters and so forth that want to just end up here? It's unrealistic. It seems like you have to have some parameters with which you can literally cope with. You know what I mean? There's just got to... and I also want to say I'm really glad. I just read in the newspaper how you were able to close Ross Camp is because, Michael, the reason they closed it was because it's closed to everyone now. It's closed to all people. So because it's closed to everyone, they can enforce the law. So there's ways that you're able to navigate, and I appreciate everything you do. Thank you so much.
Yeah, just to comment on the last part of it, Steve. I agree with you that we need solutions. And there is policy that can be put in place, and that's what's going to go before council just after the first of the year. The city attorney and I have been working on it diligently. And I would strongly suggest that the citizens make their will known at city council on what they want in terms of an ordinance, so that there are some levers that we can pull to gain compliance from people who do not want to comply with the standards of this community. And until that takes place, you're right. It'll continue to be this problem.
We, with this program, might be able to help in that regard. 479-1080. Give us a call if you got suggestions. That'd be great.
One of the things that people need to understand is when we wrote about 11,000 tickets. I think in 2018. The last time I had the data in front of me. And then of those tickets, about 8,700 were written to people without addresses. Of those, about 92% never appeared on those citations. And after you've received multiple citations, it goes to collections. So think of the logic of this. We're sending people who are trying to get housed to collections. It's the antithesis of what we should be doing. But there has to be some kind of leverage of some sort that we can say, hey, this is not acceptable in this community. And we're going to take action, and it's going to have to be kind of action that allows you to understand what the norms of this community are. And so that's kind of where we're focused.
Let's move on to our next caller. That would be Bill in Santa Cruz. Hey, Bill, welcome to KSCO with MC and Chief Wills.
Hey, Michael. Good show. Very appropriate. I mean, it's really kind of what Santa Cruz is known for, is the homeless problem. I kind of am resolved that this is the price of freedom and liberty that you pay. The courts are the ones that are adjudicating what the chief can and can't do. We do have liberty and freedom in this country, and that's part of the problem. You just can't go out and arrest people and move them on or put them in pens or whatever. It just doesn't work that way. My understanding is they have to be an endangerment to themselves or to others in order to arrest them. And clearly, hygiene can become an endangerment to others, which I think is fitting into what he's talking about as far as camping. Where's the human waste, that type of thing? Where's the potable water coming from? But what percentage of the people that you encounter, Chief, and I know this I don't want to put you on the spot, but what percentage do you believe are mentally ill or borderline mentally ill and or drug addicted, or a combination of the two? It seems to me that that's a fairly high percentage. Would you not agree?
Well, the ones that we see, yes. So there's about 1,100, according to the point-in-time count. So you do plus or minus on that, but 1,100 homeless persons living in the city of Santa Cruz, about 2,200 in the count. And you're not seeing most of those people. You're seeing about 400 to 600 on a consistent basis, who we get most of the radio calls off of. Of that crowd, the percentage is extraordinarily high of mental health and drug addiction. Not all of the others are that way. Many do have mental health problems, and as we know, sometimes mental health problems can come and go, whether they're being medicated or whether in a bad space. One thing that the federal government has been pretty strong about is that when people do get adequate sleep, they they stabilize, and that is one of the things that we need to figure out is how do we get a certain percentage of these people to sleep someplace so that they can become more stable. And because and I don't, I'm an old guy, so when I don't get sleep for a day or two at a time, I'm exhausted. I get grouchy. I get irritable. And that's just a day or two at a time. Some of these folks don't get more than 2 or 3 hours of sleep at a time because of the condition they're in. Now, whether it's by choice or whether by fate, that's a different topic.
Yeah, exactly. And they do exercise a degree of choice, but then on the other hand, their choices are somewhat bound in some manner or form. But I just think that's the problem is that you've got a situation where liberty and freedom is heralded and is at a very high level of importance in this country. And so, in other countries such as, let's say China, if they just wanted to go up and round up people, it would be easy to do it. They could do it. You can't do that here in America. And that's just part of the cost of freedom. Thanks for taking my call.
You bet. Thanks for calling in, Bill, in Santa Cruz. Before we go to Angela in Watsonville, who will be our next caller, and anybody is invited to participate in the program today. The phone number is 831-479-1080. The email address is mz@ksco.com. Let me read this quick email from Andres. Compelling people to receive help with a question mark? This idea seems so anti-American and counterproductive. It not only appears to be a violation of the oath of office, but it also an aggressive way to justify slippery slope authoritarianism upon the most vulnerable segment of our society. Be human, have respect, keep your oath of office. Forcing help is as helpful as waterboarding for truth or bombing villages to prevent terror, in quotes. Okay, thanks, Andres. Next question.
Okay. Let me respond to that real quickly.
Sure.
We already compel people to get help. It's 5150 of the Health and Safety Code. When you are not in a place where you're able to care for yourself, or you're mentally ill to the point where you're a danger to yourself or others, we compel people to get help. And there's good reason for that. Because if you have a person who's mentally unstable and they're walking around with a knife and they're swinging it wildly, do we not want the police to do that? Of course we do. And this, Andreas may be one of those people who are police abolitionists who want to get rid of the police altogether. That's a current trend amongst some. Well, he's certainly in this country welcome to his opinion, his right of free speech. I just respectfully disagree with him.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like Andres. He's a pretty level-headed guy. Maybe he'll call in, but in fact, I think he should. About the keep your oath of office. How is it not keeping an oath of office to compel people who need help to get it? I guess that's the question I have. So.
Yeah. So, for instance, right now we have a program that we work with the sheriff's office on. That if we arrested one gentleman almost 200 times for being drunk in public. Wow. And every time we arrest him, not every time, but frequently when we arrest him, we have to take him to the hospital. So every trip to the hospital, to emergency room, is going to be $3,000 to $5,000 that somebody is going to have to pay. It's not that person. And so what we did is we compelled help. We took him to jail and gave him the option, which is you can either sit here in jail and do your 60 days according to the courts, or else you can go to get help. Long story short, we haven't seen that guy in 6 months. He went and got help. And while that's just an anecdotal story that we need to see bigger numbers on, there are people that once they're compelled to get help by the courts, get that help and become much healthier and happier. And regardless of the view of some, it's important for people to get help. And so I'm not saying round up people and force them because we might disagree with their lifestyle, obviously. There has to be a law behind it.
You said that you were old. I don't know how old, but I presume that you're old enough to remember the Andy Griffith Show, right? And I was thinking of Otis, the drunk who was always who Andy and Barney would throw in the jail until he sobered up. So,
well, just see what we all have that image in our minds of what society could look like back in the day. But there are also a lot of problems with those societies. And that's not the reality of what our officers face in the field. What our officers really face in the field every day is that man that arrested 200 times defecates and urinates himself and throws up on himself every day. And so they have to deal with that. We have another guy that we arrested multiple times for smearing feces all over himself, getting naked and standing on top of cars. That's what the reality is what our officers have to deal with. It's not Otis. Letting himself in for a little sleep off. And, we all wish we could go back to that kind of day, but it's not the reality of our world right now.
And as far as I know, Otis never smeared feces on himself nor anyone.
So Andy would not have been happy with that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Angela in Watsonville, you're on with Chief Andy Mills and MZ.
Okay, and hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you? I have 2 points. I am from Spain, and I don't see hardly no homeless ever in Spain. And it's a small country, and it's not a rich country. But the point is, over there, when Franco was in the power in the 50s and 60s, he built, million, whatever, many apartments. And every poor person had an apartment. And they still do. They die, now their children have it, or whatever. And also families. In America, people don't bother. I don't want to, they kick you out. Over there, the family keep the men, they're mentally, drugging, everything, they keep it at home. Their son, their brothers, whatever. They don't throw in the streets. So in America, people don't like to do that. I know that. I lived here many years. And also, one more thing I was trying to say, I kind of forgot now, but that's what I think, that our government in this country should build apartments, but they don't.
Why don't they? Because around here, it's because of an hysterical fear of growth, of a tremendous anti-growth sentiment. That started in the mid to late 70s, And I don't know if it's continued, if it's quite as bad now, because there is some building being allowed. For a long time, there wasn't much at all. So
Yeah.
anyhow,
I don't understand. So that is very sad for the poor people. They don't have a home. Oh, now in Spain they have some homeless, because I go over there every year. But you know who the homeless are? People from other countries. There's a lot of immigration over there. People from Poland, Romania, South America. There are many, and those people, some of those, they don't have a family, of course, no home. And you see some in Madrid, and there are some few homeless. But the Spanish people, they don't go homeless. The family take care of them.
wow. Well, yeah. So we could take a page out of the books of other countries that don't have the problem. Yeah.
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 Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, but Franco people, they don't like Franco. Well, not many people, but he did some bad thing, but he did some good thing. I'm telling you, if you go to in my hometown, neighborhood, 1,000 full apartment, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 floor. And it's many people live there, and those apartments, they belong to them. After a while, you own it. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I want to say.
Okay. Well, we're happy you said it right here on KSCO AM 1080 and 104.1 FM. Yes.
Well,
Okay. Thank you, Angela, and do call again. We enjoy hearing from you.
Have a good day. Have a good day.
Too.
Bye.
Okay. Now it looks like we're going to go to Sean in Live Oak. We got a couple minutes left to the top of the hour. Go ahead, Sean. You're on with Chief Mills.
Well, I've heard some other people comment, but whatever you subsidize, you get more of. And it seems like that's one of Santa Cruz's problems is on one level we're subsidizing homelessness, and it's growing to the point that now we no longer have the resources to deal with it. So it's sort of a question to me of getting these people help without encouraging that.
Yeah, it's a fine line to hold, isn't it? You want to help people who are less fortunate than us, but at the same time, you don't want to attract more. Question is that truly a matter that if you provide subsidy? And then secondly, what subsidies are the city of Santa Cruz providing? We provide a shelter at 1220 River Street. We pay for the homeless services team downtown who cleans up the downtown area, teaching people employment skills so they can get off the street, and some do go on to get employment. There are a few things that the city of Santa Cruz funds, but not very many because that's not our responsibility. That's the responsibility of the county to provide the general relief, to provide the mental health services, to provide all those things. So, and I think that's one of the things that people don't really understand is what is the responsibility of the city and the county and the state. Those are very different responsibilities. All the money that goes to that comes out of the general fund. And the general fund is what pays for streets and police and fire and parks and so forth. But I get the emails and the phone calls and the cries for help from people every single day that say, I got a person camping.
Hold that thought, Chief Mills, please. We're within 10 seconds of the end of the end of the hour.
Coyote to San Martin, and a northbound slowdown due to a big wreck. We're talking white SUV versus red pickup truck versus 1185. I'm not sure what that means, but right now, 1 hour, 5 minutes worth of delay at this time on Highway 101 northbound, just past San Miguel Canyon Road, all the way to about the 156 interchange. Taking a look at our weather, it's currently 52 degrees outside KSCO, 51 San Jose, 54 Monterey. Sunny skies can be expected for the rest of the day, and a high of 57. Overnight temperatures are going to get down to the mid to low 40s. And come Sunday, we will be seeing showers, possibly a few rumbles of thunder as well, according to the National Weather Service. News Talk time currently coming up at 11:07, and with that, we begin hour number 2 of the Saturday Special with your host, MZ.
Oh, hello, darling. I hate to hang up on you,
How often is it that you get to talk to a real live chief of police?
Not often.
That's happening today, yeah.
I'm sorry, baby, but I really gotta go to KSCO Radio. Bye.
Okay, welcome back. No, not welcome back. Welcome to hour number 2. It used to drive me crazy. I wanted to fire the talk host who would say, welcome back to hour number 2. You could say that after a commercial break in hour number 2, but at the beginning of hour 2, you don't say welcome back to hour 2. You say welcome to hour 2.
What made you not fire him? Or did you?
I'm going to fire. Well, but he caught himself. He caught himself, you know. I mean, he did. Yep.
He checked himself.
Checked himself in, yeah. Hey, so let's see. How many police chiefs were there? I have a friend named Gene Peeney, who's named after his dad, who was Chief Gino Peeney back in the 50s and 60s in Santa Cruz. You probably know that name, Chief Mills, yeah. And how many? There have been a bunch of chiefs of police since then, huh?
Yeah, chiefs don't last too long.
In Santa Cruz or any place.
Any place, yeah.
Wow. And you think of them, and of course, Chief Peeney wasn't this way. I never got into trouble, so I had never met Chief Peeney, actually. I just knew and know his son. But I always thought of a police chief as someone with a heavy Irish accent. Are there such people that you know of who are who fit the mold of the classic police chief?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it used to be the mold. Now it's changing dramatically. Nationwide. We're seeing a lot more people of color and women in leadership, and I think that's a good thing.
Right. Okay. Now I see our director of digital media is here. We've started. I think this is the third time we will have had Jaunty on. First, doing a little segment at the beginning of the second hour. So hold on just a minute for us, Chief Mills, and we want to get Jaunty on. I'm going to lock you in here so we don't, by mistake, hang up on you. Jaunty.
Yeah, no worries.
Jaunty. Hi, Jaunty.
Hi, MZ.
Okay, so what's new and exciting? What a boring term that is. What's new and exciting?
There's a whole bunch of things. I feel like I don't want to take up too much time. You guys are having such a great conversation today. I'll give you, how about a quick update on the app?
Sure. The KSCO app.
I've been going back and forth with the developer. He was sending these versions of the app to me saying, okay, everything's
don't
great,
forget to name
working.
the developer by name.
It's our friend Nishit in Gujarat Province, India.
Yeah, Nishit. I love Nishit.
He's saying to me the live streams work, and I'm coming back and I'm saying, no, they absolutely don't. It crashes every time I try and play the live stream. And we were really at an impasse. I tried a tablet and a different device and checked the operating system.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me that maybe I shouldn't like Nishit as much as I do?
No, I'm not telling you that. No. It's just part of.
You were at an impasse. Impasses are never good things, Jaunty.
Well,
I've never heard anybody describe an impasse as a good thing. They're always negative things.
Let me finish the story, MZ. I think you'll see how this goes.
Okay.
So he's saying, no, it absolutely is working on my phone. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, why is it working on his phone and not on mine? And then I had the thought, maybe it has to do with the way that the phone's connecting. So I went for a walk down the road with my wife's Android phone, and I realized that as soon as I got out of range of our Wi-Fi, the live streams work great. So now we know what the problem is. There's an issue with the Wi-Fi specifically.
You have to fire your Wi-Fi company.
Well, it's with the way the app is dealing with Wi-Fi. But now that we know what the issue is, we should be able to resolve it in short order and get onto the get on to the next thing. So things are cleaning up there nicely, and there's about a dozen other things going on. But MZ, I want to read the usual blurb, if I may, and then
sure.
Get out of your hair. While you've got Chief Mills on, I want to just give the community as much time as they can to engage in this. I'm really impressed. I mean, what a great show. What a healthy thing for a community to be doing. So here goes. And MZ, I will record this week, and then you can, we'll have it on hand. If you're a fan of the Saturday Special, why not be a super fan? Visit SaturdaySpecial.com and discover all the ways you can listen or participate. Subscribe to the Saturday Special YouTube channel for weekly shows and promos. Listen to the podcast on iTunes or Google Play, and subscribe to the newsletter for the inside scoop. That's SaturdaySpecial.com. Kind of hard to forget. There really isn't another show like it, but I'll say it one more time. Visit SaturdaySpecial.com.
Now, who could argue with that? I can't.
You want to go for a walk later, MZ?
Sure. Ted Anderson will be around too, so that'll be good. Okay, great. Thank you, Jaunty. So we'll hook up after the show. Okay?
Fantastic.
Very good. There goes Jaunty and his orchestra. Now, Chief Mills, you're still there, right?
I sure am.
Okay, good. There's nobody else on the phone, so it's just you and me. Now, we're not gonna prevent anybody else from calling if they want to. But we want to talk about other things like staffing. We want to talk about other things like crimes. We want to talk about other things like white supremacy and anti-Semitism in our sweet town of Santa Cruz. How do we start it?
There's a lot, huh?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, those three great topics.
Yeah.
I don't care about the anti-Semitism part, but it is. We do need to deal with its ugly existence.
Yeah, it's really a tragic state of affairs for our nation that seems to have increased again.
Yeah, why do you think that's the case? I mean, no, I don't think anybody will disagree with you. I certainly won't. When I was growing up, I must have had. I didn't know what a swastika was, and my mother was telling me. She told me the story about the Holocaust. Mm-hmm. And there was a time, I'm trying to remember when it was the late 50s or early 60s or something, that there was this big, they were spraying swastikas on buildings and stuff, like graffiti. Mm-hmm. And one day, within a day or two of her explaining this whole anti-Semitism and the Holocaust to me, there was a swastika on the Jewish temple, which was not there anymore, but wherever it is. But yeah, I mean that was a long time ago, and it was unbelievable that it had spread to our community then. And what can you report? I mean, maybe we shouldn't even talk about it because that might make it worse. I don't know.
Well, I don't think. I think you always have to discuss these things because
you don't want to give people ideas, But what the heck?
Yeah. Well, we're not certainly suggesting that anybody, be prejudiced against anybody else. I think the issue is how do we as a society deal with these kind of things? And the Jewish community has been the victim of many series of hate campaigns over the years. And my heritage is Jewish. My mother was a Reformed Jew, and so I understand these fears and complexities from being part of that culture. And so we have to, we try to monitor as best we can, hate groups who have the tendency to become violent and commit crimes, because it's a difficult balance, making sure that you're not impinging on people's First Amendment rights, but at the same time protecting our community from acts of violence. So it's a difficult balancing act, and I don't know.
Absolutely. Well, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we did a program on smearing, and it brought to mind a time that I was smeared personally. Back in 1995, when the Mara building in Oklahoma City was bombed, right? And because we, KSCO, chose to interview members of the Citizens Militia Group, we were branded as a hateful radio station by the Anti-Defamation League, which was a part of the B'nai B'rith that my family and I were always supportive of. But the internet it existed then, but it was nothing like hardly anybody was connected back then. So in '95 they sent out this report about things to watch, and one of the things to watch was Michael Zwerling's radio show on KSCO, and the implication was that we're a white supremacist radio station. I mean, it's so bizarre. Like, nothing could be further from the truth. But simply because we interviewed a Citizens Militia person or two or three. So what?
Right.
They have every right to say who they are and how their existence is guaranteed by the Constitution and so forth, and yet we were branded unfairly. Yeah. So tell me what's going on in our community. What kind of things have you had to deal with in terms of?
We're seeing discrimination at multiple levels. One is you see stuff on the internet where it is very imbalanced and very anti-Semitic or homophobic or, class bias. There's a variety of hate, and the unwielding bastion of anonymity just drives it even harder. And people, use all kinds of just hate speech to try to demean other people. And I'm not so, certainly the hate speech is concerning. I'm much more interested in the behaviors and the actions of people. And when we see events take place, we take those seriously. We investigate them, very carefully and make sure that we're looking at those things. One of the things that we have done is that we've implemented a team that does threat assessment. And so we get a lot of people who say, hey, I'm really concerned about, Andy or whomever, because he's been making threats, or I think that he's unstable and he's got guns. And people, give us calls on those things regularly. We now have a protocol where we go through a systematic review to determine whether or not this person is actually a threat. So we do it for schools, we've done it for the boardwalk, we've done it for private businesses, we've done it for government, we've done it for families, and it's interesting to pry into the lives of people who are making these kinds of threats and determine, are there stressors that signal that this person may become an active shooter, and if so, what are those key warning signs that we need to pay attention to? And we're doing more than just, going in. What problem with Parkland, Florida, for instance, was the, deputies and officers were called to that person's home, I think 30-some times, and nobody cued in on the behaviors associated with it. So we make our officers go through a checklist rather than just saying, is this person mentally ill or is this person a criminal? And that's what most of policing does right now. They just go through that 2-point checklist. We go through 13 different points to see if this person is likely to become an active shooter. If they are, then we take aggressive action, and we do not let these things rest. We run them to ground.
So wait a minute. So what specifically do you do if there is that suspicion?
Well, we're using a law that's called a gun violence restraining order. And we can seize weapons from the person, guns from the person for up to 1 year. It's court authorized. And then the courts make the determination of whether or not to give those guns back, unless we are able to find a charge of some kind to prohibit them from getting the guns. Let me just give you a couple examples.
Yeah, please.
We had an employer call us and say, we'd like to have a police officer come and stand by while we fire this person, but we're really concerned about this guy. Yeah, so we want the police to come in plain clothes and stand by in the room. Well, we don't do that way. We're not going to come by in plain clothes. We're in uniform. And then the person's own labor representative called us and said, this guy really scares me. That's one of the warning signs of the 13 that we take a look at, is that people have this fear of this person. When you hear from multiple sources, that becomes important. So we actually did a workup on this person and found out that through interviews, through looking at behaviors, and that we were very concerned. The average person who does a shooting has 3.6 major stressors in their lives. Substance abuse or a death in the family, financial loss, problems with the law, termination from job, that kind of thing. This person we were looking at had 7 stressors in their life. And then we do the research and find out that the person had a bunch of guns registered to him. And so we served the restraining order, asked for his cooperation, or seized 15 firearms, all of which were loaded, and impounded them. 2 weeks later, he assaulted another person with a brick and tried to hurt that person pretty badly. Thank goodness he didn't have a firearm. And,
wow, that is really chilling.
Yeah, so now we don't need to give those weapons back because he's been convicted of a felony, an assault, and that prohibits him from having weapons. And so that's just one example, and I could go through more that our officers are doing on a regular basis. We publish that, and what we've been doing in other departments around the nation now have called us and asked us for the same materials. In fact, recently, a couple of our officers just presented that information to people from all over the world at a conference that we held here in town. So it's gaining some traction. Hopefully we can cut down the amount of shootings.
Whew, wow. That is pretty well. So they're not doing nothing, that's for sure.
No.
Okay, 479-1080 if you want to talk to Chief Andy Mills here on the KSCO Saturday Special. It's 25 minutes past 11, 25 minutes into hour number 2. We're going to be up on the air right up until noon, but if you want to talk to Chief Mills, I would get on the phone right now and dial 831-479-1080. You can email mz@ksco.com. Looks like we have Dan in Pacific Grove who has a question about funding. Hey, Dan, you're on KSCO with the Chief.
Hello, Chief. And Michael, sure appreciate KSCO making this time available for this discussion, and the Chief for making himself available.
You bet.
Let's see. I don't want to. It's tempting, given my nature, to weigh into details and mess everything up. But it seems to me. Well, one thing I remember, my mother's stepfather, my grandfather, went through the San Francisco earthquake. He used to tell me stories about that. Many people were moved into temporary tents. He lived in a tent for weeks, and then some temporary housing was put up, which later built by the Army. Later, those were sold off, so given my understanding, what you stated, the current law requires the city to have a place to camp. And thoughts start coming to mind there about possibilities there. But again, without weighing into details, every solution, and I've heard some very good thoughts expressed by both of you and other callers, but every solution eventually comes down to how we're going to pay for this. So, reflecting on your comment about a county-wide problem and a statewide problem, and of course other locations in the country, what is your perception of the funding challenges for approaching any solution? Is my question. Secondly, I would encourage people to be active, go down to the city council meetings, which I do quite frequently where I live now. I used to live in Santa Cruz. I live in Pacific Grove now. And at times it has really surprised me how few people take the time to go there and provide their input, which the city council really needs and wants. And I've seen situations turn around to another direction, a more positive direction, new ideas be expressed just by citizens who bothered to become engaged in the process at the city council. So I would certainly encourage everybody to do that. And we all know that nobody has a cornerstone on good ideas, and so people should become engaged. But again, returning to my central question, could you speak to the funding issues? Just to even to put a good plan together, you need money.
Yeah, so that's a very good question, and certainly in a society like ours that operates on money, you've got to have it in order to do some of these things. And we're spending a great deal of money to host the camp at River Street. But we certainly have discussed, putting up a bigger tent where it can house, a lot more people. And the city is currently trying to buy a piece of property to bring in something of that nature. So that came from the state funding that came down just earlier this year. So about $11 million came down, and I think $1.4 million went to the city and to our county.
May I inject a thought into you said buying property. There's a lot of open acreage in the Santa Cruz area. Does it always need to translate into purchasing property? Think again, after the San Francisco earthquake, there were people, they set up tent camps in parks. So property potentially, and it's, again, details, but just to touch on it, there's some great alternative housing tents. I purchased a dome tent made by Shelter Systems, which is, I believe it's based in Santa Cruz. It's 20-foot diameter. It's like a mini house. Which provides flexibility. And then, you have organizations like Campgrounds of America that are really good at penciling this out. They have some great operations that provide anything from a piece of ground you can set a little tent, and then central facilities, all the way up to renting a room in some locations. So it seems flexibility, but one could weigh into details. There's people that have done approach design issues, cost issues, and management issues, such as Campgrounds of America, for example, but from an expert perspective, which would need to be compensated for their input, but I don't think it always needs to translate into building a structure and owning the land. But this is about...
Point well taken. I don't disagree with you at all.
This comes back to input. There are experts in the community. Some are retired. Some have time. There are people up at UC Santa Cruz studying social work. And a few people I've met over the years engaged in that professionally tend to be have very good motivations, tend to be very nice people engaged. There's possibilities of drawing on some of the people who are gaining experience in some of these fields, and maybe they could get academic credit for being engaged. So, again, some public input, as you pointed out, is really valuable, and sometimes might open doors to some new ideas, some new approaches. So, gentlemen, I'm going to leave you with this to carry on. It's great. I will continue to listen, and thank you both very much for making this discussion available.
Well, thank you, Dan. Yeah, might be a good idea to make this a regular thing too. So
that crossed my mind. I think that's a great idea. You've done this, and you've done that on other issues before. Some temporary programming, an hour or two here and there, as various issues have come across the table, and having this engagement of the citizens. That's the way things are supposed to work here. You remember when we've read about in the 1800s, the town used to get together and everybody pitched in and built the new town hall. So we're trying to build a town hall to meet some of our current needs
Thanks,
Right,
Dan and PG. Great to hear from you. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Okay, Al Lundell, a.k.a. Dr. Future, emails. Hi, Michael. Could you please ask the chief about the Santa Cruz predictive policing program, what it is and how it is working out?
So predictive policing was installed some time ago here in Santa Cruz, and it's a method based on the algorithms of where crime has taken place or where reported crime has taken place over the years, and they determine what are called hotspots. And we have moved away from that towards a more different system, which is to identify problems based on community input as well as crime data, which we do a threshold analysis on, and then and have the officers respond to those specific problems. The difference is we want is rather than just showing up to those locations, for the officers to actually take action at those locations, and to be preventative in nature, and then measure it to make sure that we're doing things correctly. Let me give you an example. We're currently doing an experiment right now at three of the parking garages downtown. Front and SoCal, the double-decker, and then the one on Lotus Street. And we're doing a different type of response to each location. And based on those responses, we're measuring before, during, and afterward, and also looking for displacement to determine what's most effective. And then taking that and then replicating it to the other locations in the city. Predictive policing doesn't provide the analytics for that. And I understand hotspot analysis, and but these things change regularly, and so it is just not as used as much as it was. I also get a lot of inquiries from council and others about the bias built into those algorithms. And those companies don't share the algorithms with you, and even if they did, I don't know that I would understand it. But that is a concern nationwide that we're seeing in many cities around the country based on that. But as you might know, the Predpol, which is a local company, I think that they have done a good job trying to eliminate as much as they can the bias out of the data that they receive. So that's where we're at with it.
Okay, thank you. Another email from Sean Piggott. I think I know the answer to this, as I think you've covered this already. It's the law of the land is your answer, I think. Pushback on Boise versus Martin. Are there any legal strategies to oppose the endless liabilities this decision imposes on communities, or is there any discussion?
Yeah, as we talked about, the city attorney and I we meet regularly and talk about this decision. We've been on lockstep on this together since I came here to make sure that we're protecting the city from enormous liability that comes from it. I think that's why the courts rewarded us with the decision that they did, because we have been careful about how we've done this. And when the Boise decision came out, it was both prospective and prospective. In other words, they can reach backwards on lawsuits. So we've been pretty careful.
God, that's crazy.
Yeah, but there are some things that I think that we can do, and that's why we're in the process of drafting not only that ordinance, but I've got about 5 more that I'm working with the city attorney on to control the behaviors of those who want to destroy what is the norm of this community. So, for instance, and now we have to go through the process of finding out whether they're constitutionally correct, whether we can, then that becomes a political issue. Are they politically acceptable to our community? Like, for instance, I would like to see an ordinance move forward that says you cannot possess a syringe in any park or on the beach in our city, period, unless, of course, you're a diabetic or something of that nature that is documentable. We have to set that standard of what's acceptable in this community. We shouldn't be able to break down bicycles more than 2 bikes at a time at any location in our city, out in the field. I understand if somebody needs to fix a broken tire or, fix their chain or their brakes, people who are serious riders, and there's a lot of them in our community. But to break down bikes, to spray paint them, that shouldn't be legal. And our officers can and will take enforcement action on that. So those are some of the types of ordinances that we're working on right now to bring forward to council, to give them the opportunity to give us direction on what they want, and then go from there.
Okay. Andres, who last hour apparently left you with the impression that he might be one of the people who are anti-cop.
Right.
Yeah. He said, can't call in, sorry, but he sent a medium-length email that I'll read now. I am not in favor of abolishing law enforcement. I am not anti-cop. He just created a straw out of my likeness and tore it apart, a logical fallacy. The founders knew cities were disgusting and lead to disgusting solutions. City police working hand in hand with the psychology, in quotes, community is disgusting and is not a sustainable solution. Forcing medication into individuals might actually even be a violation of the Nuremberg Code / medical ethics. Since medicine is a practice, all medical procedures are experimental and without consent of the individual would be unethical and possibly illegal. 5150, 5250, 5350 are ways of removing that right from the individual. But is it ethical? It's definitely not sustainable either financially or practically, especially in Santa Cruz, where we have so many characters. Good idea with a thumbs up regarding the defining of sleep as opposed to camping. Consider publicly available video streams of homeless camps on public property if your first idea doesn't work. Public places have no expectation of privacy. Use it if you think it would be helpful. And that's from Andres. Okay.
Well, I accept his. I certainly accept his opinion and in terms of what his position on law enforcement is, and I appreciate that. Obviously, he's has some sensitivities towards the 5150 sections, but that's the established law of the land, and that's what we use. And I didn't hear any solutions other than filming homeless camps. And our city is moving quickly the other direction from that. We do not film in public places. We do not have surveillance equipment. And the city council has been very strong on limiting the police ability to use surveillance equipment in public places. So, that's yet to be seen.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Let's see. It looks like we have a caller, Timothy in Santa Cruz. It says drug dealer. Are you a drug dealer, Timothy?
No.
Okay. But, you want to talk about drug dealers, I guess, right?
Yeah. I'm in an apartment complex, and it was pretty clear once I moved in about a year and a half ago that there was the guy a couple doors down was dealing drugs, had a lot of traffic. All the tenants that I've spoken to know what's going on. The landlord knows what's going on, but it seems like we couldn't, nothing can be done. And so I'm wondering what can be done. He is finally being moved out, but only because he brought in a dog, which was a violation of the lease. He had the dog for a year, with a few incidents where it got aggressive towards me, and finally there was an incident where the dog came after me. I tried to defend myself, and next thing I know, the guy assaulted me. So now, because of the assault, he's being evicted. But
it was an assault of good fortune in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a blessing in disguise. But I'm, the problem hasn't gone away, and if anything, it's going to continue because the landlord told me he helped him find another place and keep his Section 8, and he's just going to move into another place and deal drugs there.
Yeah. Hey, it's Tim, right?
Yeah, Timothy. Yeah.
Yeah, Timothy, can you do me a favor? Just email me any specifics that you have, and then at amills@cityofsantacruz.com, not gov.com. And I'd be happy to assign that to somebody to take a look at it because several issues. One, we absolutely do go after people who are dealing drugs. There's a lot of them. It takes time. They're very complex investigations and not easy to do, but we do them. The second thing is having extra income while you're on Section 8 is against the law, and that's how you get your Section 8 revoked. And if we can demonstrate that the person is getting extra money, whether it's through having another person living with them or dealing drugs and making money that way, we will absolutely go after that as well. So just shoot me an email with name, date of birth, whatever you have, location, and I'll assign it to one of our folks to go after.
Okay, what's the email again?
amills.
How do you spell that?
A as in Andy.
Mm-hmm.
Mills, MILLS.
Okay.
At cityofsantacruz.com.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Timothy.
This is positive. Okay, take next. That would be Jim in Jim, I don't know where, but how people become homeless is the topic. Go ahead, Jim, you're on.
Well, I wanted to give you an example of how an ordinary person could become homeless in your area. Say you're a man who gets divorced. Rent is rather high there, so you can end up, if you rent a room, you end up paying in the neighborhood of at least $600 a month just to rent a room. So you get divorced, you have to pay child support. You may have student debt. And you're going to have storage because you got to move your stuff out of the house, right? So you got to have a place to put your stuff. So you got storage, you got child support, you got maybe student debt, you got to eat, you got to wash your clothes. It's not hard to become homeless in the Monterey Bay area. I have to tell you, it's from personal experience. It just takes a little disruption in your life, and of course, that can lead to drug abuse and that kind of stuff. But if you stick to your morals and keep working hard, then you shouldn't have a problem. But it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for bringing that perspective, and didn't know that about you before, Jim, but thanks for sharing. Cody in Live Oak, you are the next caller on the Saturday special.
No, I'm your surrogate father, MZ. I'm Tony.
Oh, Tony.
Yes,
okay.
hi.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to talk to Chief Mills, please.
He's on. He's hearing you.
Well, I've got good news and bad news. Well, I don't know whether it's really good news, but I believe on George Nuri's show recently, they talked about a new law coming up for review in Virginia, where anyone who builds any building has to provide resting place for strangers. Sounds like Switzerland, where they provide a bathroom for anybody walking by your home. It has to you have to have an outside accessible bathroom to let people go to the bathroom in your house. But that's still up for review. But it still is kind of politically correct to have a resting place in some part of any residential building. Or
Andy, have you ever heard of that?
No, I have not.
Well, that's on George Nuri's about a week ago, I think. Anyway, the bad news is that what's going on right now is you're not going to believe this. Maybe you won't. This highway patrol, when they stop people, are accusing people of being pot users if their tongue is green. I was stopped on the first Sunday in Capitola, and probably a training session because one officer was teaching another officer how to fill out a form while they were interviewing me. And he says, "You're a pot smoker." I says, "No, I'm 84 years old, and I've had weak lungs, and I couldn't smoke pot. I tried to use ingestibles, or what do you call it, some kind of food with pot in it, and that never did anything for me. So I have nothing to do with it. No. And he accused me literally 5 times, and on the 5th time he says, I wonder what else you're lying about. Now, under the stress of the situation, I don't even remember sticking my tongue out so he could see it. But you certainly can't verify for yourself while you're being interviewed at midnight on November 3rd, I think it was, here in downtown Capitola with no other cars on the road. I think I was stopped only because I was the only other person on the road. But the point is, I checked with the man who reviewed my case, came down from San Jose, and he said, yeah, I believe that we use that as an indicator of pot use. The last time the man accused me, that Sunday night.
Tony, listen, I hate to. It's not designed to be a speech here. If you have a question for Chief Mills, I'd appreciate it. But you're going on and on and on and on. I love you, but don't.
Okay, Chief Mills. My question is, why would the Highway Patrol be doing something which is obviously false? Because another friend of mine who's a business owner in Santa Cruz said a California Highway Patrolman said, we just say that. So, and I was accused 5 times, and then I was told that I was a liar because I disagreed. Now, do you have any comment on that?
I don't know the current procedures for trying to detect if someone's driving under the influence of cannabis or marijuana.
Okay.
And but I do know this, that Craig Kunstler, who's the captain of the local CHP station, is a wonderful guy, and would be more than happy to talk with you if you have any questions.
That's what I'll do. I'll talk to him. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Tony. This next caller is Steve in P. Grove, who is a Section 8 tenant. Is that right, Steve?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for having the show.
Sure.
Chief, what do you think about a moral compass for these guys to get all the freebies? Maybe showing up in the morning and maybe not doing anything, but you just can't sit on your butt all day and do nothing. Like Tim was saying, it just drives me crazy. I mean, I see a couple of these guys, it's like, MZ, the Chief, you go crazy if you're sitting on your butt all day, right? I'm assuming you got to get something accomplished.
I would go crazy if I was sitting on my butt all day and not getting anything accomplished.
Well, maybe that's why I wonder. Is there like a moral compass, Chief? I mean, I know you can't implement it. I mean, how do you get these guys? It's like they win the lottery,
Yeah,
you just don't get it.
Yeah, no. One of the things that we're looking at is how do we again create that leverage point that we talked about earlier, and we're looking at rather than issuing citations or issue citations and hold in abeyance so that people can come and work off the citation so it doesn't have to go to the courts. I don't care if you pick up one piece of paper, it's better than what we're getting now. But if we can get somebody to come and help out our community and make it positive for other people, because I think, it dawns on me that some of the folks that we're seeing that are problematic, it's all about them and nobody else, where when you live in a community, it should be about everybody. I mean, just, for instance, walking across the middle of the street in front of traffic, you see it regularly. And, not only in Santa Cruz, but everywhere else I go. That's a citation. Then rather than, paying the fine, I'd much rather have you come and clean up the 1500 block of Pacific Avenue for one day. That would be, to me, would be huge. And so I think that gets to the heart of what this caller is asking. It provides a moral compass that I'm not the most important person in the world. I'm part of this community. And I think that's what's missing for a lot of the people that we see.
Thank you very much, Chief. You spoke it more well than I ever could. Thank you, MZ, for having your show. Appreciate it.
Okay. Great. Now, it looks like we have Ken in Scotts Valley about bicycles. Ken, you're on the air.
Yeah, good morning. I have a question. I was told that bicycles are supposed to follow the same laws as vehicles. And I live in Scotts Valley. I drive to Santa Cruz daily. And at night, you got these guys dressed in black, no lights on, running stop signs. They're really a menace and a hazard. And I never see them get pulled over. I never see them stop for violating the laws that they're violating. So, and then the other thing is, like on Ocean Street, there's signs saying, not to stand on the medium, and the guys are standing right in front of the signs, panhandling at the stoplights, and I never see them stopped or told to leave. So I know you guys got priorities, and obviously those aren't priorities, but the bicycles, they're really a hazard, and especially dressed in black with no lights. I wouldn't want to hit somebody.
Oh, you just pushed my button, Ken. Boy, yeah. I don't know if you've heard me complain about that before, but it seems to me that most people who walk or bike at night insist on having the darkest clothing possible instead of the opposite, which is what it should be.
Or when they go the wrong way.
Or when they go the wrong way, yeah.
So let me answer Ken's questions. And first of all, you're 100% correct. You have to abide by the same laws as a motor vehicle does on the street. So people riding the wrong direction, people cutting cattywampus through the intersection, people riding down the sidewalk. You can't drive a car down the sidewalk. You can't ride a bicycle down the sidewalk in the downtown area. So we certainly do not only warn but ticket those people. And furthermore, a lot of the people on bicycles, especially when you see backpacks at nighttime, those are our car burglars. Those are our people stealing out of yards. And so our officers take a pretty aggressive stance trying to identify them and they get in their pockets. It's not unusual for us to get in pursuits with people on bicycles. And then trying to bring those pursuits to an end is a tricky thing because you have to use a reasonable amount of force. But no, we agree with you. We do take action on those. I don't know if you see it or not. And the guys on the medians who are panhandling, that is against the law to panhandle that location because it's a safety issue, not because it's against the law to panhandle. And we do tell them to get off those medians and then do issue citations. I wrote one of my officers maybe a month and a half ago, and he stopped and wrote a guy a ticket while I was with him for standing on the median panhandling.
Well, and also Pacific Avenue, I don't know whose idea it was to have the bicycles ride in the opposite direction of the flow of traffic. But when you're parked in front of one of the retail stores and you go to pull out, yes, you look in front of you, and then you look in your mirrors and see if anybody's coming. The next minute you go to pull out, here's this bike coming right at you.
Yeah.
And it kind of defies logic when, if the flow of traffic is this way, I think all flow of traffic should be that way. You shouldn't have to concern yourself with traffic coming at you in both directions. It creates a problem.
Yeah, so I would encourage you to talk to planning if that's something that really is important to you, because they're the ones who are responsible for that.
Okay. Ken in Scotts Valley, thank you for calling this Saturday special. Okay, homeless young adults. This is an email from Martha Bowersock. Concerning homelessness, looking at the state and federal income tax structure, it is that age 18 as a young adult is said to be no longer a dependent. An absent parent no longer pays support. The system demands these persons to be independent. Many parents set them free to the streets. If they have no means to continue their education, they have to sink or swim in rough terrain. Maybe some tax support for parents? Even gifting to them is taxable. All right. Well, nobody else on the line. We got just over 3 minutes, so there is a chance for someone to sneak in real quick here. Otherwise, Chief Mills, what do you think? I think talk radio can be a positive resource in solving community concerns, don't you?
Well, I think it's always, I like talk radio, and I think it's always important to have people be able to air their opinions and influence policy. That's what this is about. And so I appreciate you giving me the time, out of your Saturday to have this opportunity to speak with many of your people who called in.
Ditto, and you took time out of your presumably holiday vacation, so for a couple hours. Right. That's really cool. So yeah, I think that's fantastic. Let's try one more. It looks like we might have time for one more caller. Cameron in Santa Cruz.
Thanks
Cameron, you're on.
Call. Yeah, good morning. Glad you're having the special for Chief on. Appreciate it. I'm going to just share a story that happened in a Trader Joe's downtown. I observed someone shoplifting right in front of me. It was an older homeless woman. I stopped her before she went to the door to say, "Hey, may I buy that for you?" It was a $2.29 rice pudding. And she immediately started breaking down and crying and embarrassment also. And I said, "I'm not here to judge you, but there's no reason to go out that door doing such a thing." Now, I do know the downtown policy about shoplifting and going out, that employees aren't allowed to go after them or, cross the threshold for fear of having a violent outcome. And then when I spoke to the manager of the business, they said, "Yep, we just kind of build that into our budget and your pricing on the shoplifting that's going on." So,
wow.
I'm a little bit of a softie when it comes to seeing this sort of stuff happen and wanting, maybe it's the seasonal heart, what have you. There's been other times when I've stopped someone in the tracks and said, "Hey," because I see it all the time downtown. I'm just curious on Chief Andy's response around this. Take the answer offline. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Andy.
Well, first of all, I appreciate that there's a guy that dipped into his own pocket to help somebody else less fortunate. I mean, that bespeaks of who Santa Cruz is. Yes, they can be hypercritical, and yes, they can have all kinds of, opinions, but the bottom line is I think Santa Cruz is a generous place who really cares for people. Certainly, shoplifting impacts the bottom line for stores. And, and some stores can no longer hang because they have so much of a shrinkage. And that's tragic. I think that there are things that people can do to reduce the amount of shrinkage and theft that they experience in the stores, and we encourage them to do that. And we'll send an officer to work with them on that.
Right.
And a lot of it is, I was talking to one of the shop owners downtown, and I said, well, if you were to build a profile of who's stealing from you.
God, I hate to do this, Andy. It's the end of the show. There's no time unless we... hey, thank you so much. Apologies to Wayne in Santa Cruz and Lee Nee in Aptos. But that's the end of the show. Got to have you on again, Andy. By the way, anybody can hear any of these shows on our app or at ZBS Radio, 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 our app or at ZBS Radio.